Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for being here with us.
Until all of his legal stuff is played out and until the NFL rules in some way, I just think his 2021 season is a washout.
The fact that the Texans took a kid with their first draft choice this year, I mean, with all their holes to fill.
They are an expansion team.
That's right.
They have one pick in the top 80, and they pick a quarterback. And Nick Caserio says, in essence, oh, that doesn't mean anything.
Maybe we got our starter for the future in Davis Mills. I don't think he's that. I'll say that. But at the very least, yeah, you take a shot in the dark that could be the future. We can win games and make do if Tyrod did get hurt early in the year and we got to throw somebody in.
Texans have released their schedule.
Now it's time?
It's time. Here is the schedule. Check it out.
And welcome to another episode of the Turn Up For What podcast, talking your Houston Texans straight from the Great British Isles, and are joined this week on schedule release. There's not just a Tiger released in Houston this week. We've got a schedule to talk about, and a man that doesn't probably need much introduction. I'm probably going to have to ask him not to forget me when he's big time. But Mr. Brandon K. Scott from the Bebop podcast and Radio 610. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate the kind introduction, but the one thing that I will always be, no matter what's going on over here, is common. You know, I got enough people in my life that keep me common, so I will never forget. I will always know and always appreciate my time on the Turn Up For What podcast.
I appreciate having you on. I think it's, I mean, and I was sort of thinking about this as I was writing up my notes, and you think of a guy like you and a guy like me just sitting talking across the water about a team that's probably not going to be very good this season by any stretch of the imagination, but it shows you that it's bigger than sometimes what happens between the white lines.
Yeah, well, especially with this, I mean, the whole thing with the Texans right now is observing everything outside the white lines and how it materializes inside the lines, right? So, and it's going to take some time knowing where they are right now for that story to fully be told. So, you know, we're a part of something, you know, that's really starting from the ground up here. And whether it actually turns into something worth watching still remains to be seen. But the process is fascinating, you know, from rebuilding the team, even just the idea of firing Bill O'Brien and then the replacement ultimately becomes David Culley, and just the premise of whether you even got better there, you know, just to have that initial conversation. And then that's not even to mention all these other things that you and I obviously have gotten into and we'll get into here. So yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating time. It's a fascinating time. And I will say it is cool to be there, to feel like you're there for something that's like from the beginning. You know, like this is a new beginning. And so however it turns out, I will have been able to say, hey, I was there when they started this project, and pass or fail, this is how it went.
Where we are right now, and I suppose I've heard multiple people question it, and it's probably true. I don't think the team's chances, quality of personnel, quality of coaching staff are any better than, I don't think we're any better off than we were in 2002, 3, 4, and 5. I think we're right probably at that stage. And at least I suppose back then you had a new quarterback that had potential, and maybe that is Davis Mills. But when you watch the draft and you watch them kind of shed picks to get certain guys, take a quarterback, what was just, you know, your kind of 5,000 foot view of the draft and just how it went?
Well, let's start with the quarterback. Just, you know, initially I was anti-quarterback at that spot because I didn't think any of the good ones, you know, all the good ones went high, right? So, and after that, I wasn't impressed. You know, I didn't want or did not think that the Texans should draft Kyle Trask or Kellen Mond or Davis Mills. I didn't think any of those guys were going to be like a franchise level guy. I wouldn't be surprised if any or all three of those guys makes a career in the NFL as a backup or a plug and play starter, in a pinch, so to speak. But those were never to me the answer at quarterback. Therefore, options that I thought were good ones in that space. Now, the other side of that argument I understand is, hey, you might as well, if you need a quarterback or feel like you might need a quarterback, you might as well draft a quarterback every year until you find one. That is a philosophy that I'm not necessarily opposed to. Here, it was just the specific quarterbacks that were available that I just did not think were worth the time. And I suspect that I'm going to be proven right on that, that with Davis Mills, what you're ultimately going to find is perhaps a quality backup and a potential, like I said before, plug and play kind of guy that can start for you in a pinch, but not somebody that you want to build your team around, or once your team is a contender elsewhere, around the quarterback, think that this is the guy. Like, to me, I'm not even sure if he's Jimmy Garoppolo, so, as far as like talent wise. So what do you do with that is ultimately the question. And so that's why I didn't love the pick. Obviously, as someone who's kind of in it for the long haul, I'm open to be proven wrong on that and would love to be. But I don't suspect that that's going to be the case. And then, of course, the other notable move is the one you alluded to, was trading up. What was it? Basically 20 spots to get Nico Collins, the wide receiver, who I think has some potential and adds an element to the offense that I don't think was there. The big catch radius. One of my colleagues here at Sports Radio 610 said that right after the draft that the Texans need a wide receiver who can ride the rides at Six Flags, the amusement park, parks here in the States. You need someone who's at least tall enough to kind of just go get a ball. But the idea of trading up for him, I know, was controversial, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it. But in the moment, I thought, man, this guy better be really good. Like this guy better be really good for someone who didn't play last year, and it's not necessarily an impressive route runner, but physically has tools, and again, the big catch radius, some speed. I'm interested to see how all of this goes. I was not a big fan of the class overall. My favorite pick is probably Brevin Jordan, the tight end, but I didn't feel like they had a whole lot to work with, from the start. So I was only going to be but so critical. But I will say picking the quarterback that I don't think is going to amount to much is a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, because you want to put some stakes in the ground for future years, and I don't think they did that in many ways. And Nico Collins, I think, because you give up an equivalent of a third, right? And and if you think, well, we've given away picks like they didn't matter last couple of years, if you think, if you just think if you'd had the Duke Johnson pick, if you'd had the Gary and Connolly pick for 8 games and all that kind of stuff, and you think, well, okay, we've not used the picks, we've not given them the respect, I suppose, that they deserved in many ways, and we've not given the process, or certainly Bill O'Brien did not respect the process of how it is to build the team. And I think Nico Collins would have been the perfect pick if if Watson was in play this season, I think, because that's exactly what we missed last year. Ironically, you jettisoned a guy out of town that had that exact skill set for personality issues or what have you. But in Hop, and we'll come on to seeing him in week 7. But there's
How about that though? How about the fact that you had a better version of Nico Collins not that long ago? Yeah. It wasn't that long ago when Hopkins was on this team. That's a very good point.
And there's a reason why he was available in the 3rd. There's a reason why Brevin Jordan fell at the 5th, because he doesn't have the prototypical measurables that guys succeed in the pros do. I thought the worst. I mean, I can live with that because it was very specific. You can see a role, you can see his tape. He played a big school in the Big Ten. He's done it. He's there. There is pedigree. So you can kind of think, well, fair enough. You can obviously see what I can see. You've got coaching staff links. But for me, the Garrett Waller one was the worst, I think, because they've traded up for a guy who is a Brian Peters, Dylan Cole type, both undrafted free agents. And I watched both. I talked about this last week. And there was 2 games I watched. I just couldn't believe that was who they picked at that spot. And you think, just take a flyer on a DB or an edge rusher, and just because the payoff is so much bigger there than that special team linebacker who might, be able to play a bit, sort of come downhill from sort of safety and nickel and dime looks, probably is going to be more likely than actually being able to stand up at the line of scrimmage, because he's not got it, I don't think, from the two games that I watched, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. So yeah, I thought it was almost like the board they had was very small. And I saw this week that they said a lot of teams only had about 10 or 12 first round grades. The rest were all, by the time you got into the teams were well in their second round grades. So if you continue that trend right down your board, by the time you're in the fifth and sixth round, it's more than plausible that a lot of teams did not have, draftable grades in the sixth round or even the fifth for that matter. So it seemed like Caserio kind of thought, well, we'll trade up to get in a position. I know there was Nate Hobbs from Illinois. They supposedly were trying to go up and missed out on him, if that's to be believed. And they just squandered felt like they squandered a lot of resources. And if it was more the fact that they put resources in, or they took resources out of next year in a fourth round as well, and just said we threw a fourth round in, was his exact phrase, Caserio. So yeah, I think overall just sentiment for me is limited. I think, a possible quarterback, a possible, X-type receiver, a possible move tight end that may have some blocking and upside, but his tape is some good, some bad. And a couple of guys who are special teams and some guy called Roy. So, it's limited, I think, overall. I don't think there's much to think, we've got, even if you came out with three guys that you thought, I can see they'll all play starter role at some point in the next 2 years, then fine. But we didn't do that. And I think it's limited. It's probably just another step. But I think the biggest thing for me, Brandon, was the quarterback pick. It just felt like you're one step closer to the end with the whole Watson thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that is clear. They didn't want to say that. And obviously they can't say that given where they are with everything, just that it's so hairy right now. But that made it very clear that, now you have, remember in the beginning of the offseason, the reason for going out and getting other quarterbacks because you didn't have any more, right? AJ McCarron had become a free agent. Josh McCown retired. And Nick Caserio tells us, well, yeah, all we had was one player under contract at quarterback. And so we obviously had to go get some. Well, now you're at the other end of that, where now you have 4 quarterbacks on the team. And, and somebody's got to go. Right. And the obvious choice from a talent standpoint is Ryan Finley. Like, what's he doing here? But you executed a trade to get the guy, and we all know what's going on with Deshaun Watson. That it's just pretty clear. So yeah, that is a window into the future. Now we can split hairs on how they've addressed the future, whether they picked the right guy or whether that was the moment to address said issue. With the quarterback, but yeah, it's an obvious and clear indicator that Deshaun Watson is not here for the long haul. Whether that's because of him not wanting to be here or them not wanting him to be here, at this point, it doesn't even really matter what the reasons are, because it just it doesn't seem tenable. I still, just as somebody who wants to have to witness and cover good quarterback play, still have the slightest bit of hope that there's a way that he could still be on this team, and these things that are happening off the field could possibly not be what they appear to be and seem to be in some cases, and that this thing could just sort of fix itself. But that does not seem to be the case. And drafting Davis Mills is an indicator of that. I am interested to see what happens with Deshaun Watson as far as the league is concerned, because Mark Berman did have the information late in the night that apparently he was able to get Tony Busby either on the phone or one way or the other. And, at least 4 of the Deshaun Watson accusers have cooperated in some capacity or spoken with the league. So, I don't know what that means and what that entails and what that looks like for Deshaun Watson. Before I'd seen that, my thought on this whole thing was, as bad as it sounds, there is no real hard, proof that Deshaun Watson did anything nefarious beyond, possibly having some type of, sexual relationship with a massage. Like the biggest thing that you could probably even put on him would be prostitution, based off of what you feel like . So I didn't know what that was going to mean for him in terms of the long-term investigation or for the league. But then when you find out that you have at least more than one accuser. You have 4, according to Busby, apparently, per Mark Berman, who are talking to the league. So now I just want to see what's next with that. Because that's a big part of this now. Deshaun Watson's availability, and that would determine, I guess, when and if a team's willing to trade for him. So yeah, that's your quarterback room now is Tyrod Taylor and some combination with your backup with Ryan Finley and Davis Mills. And Deshaun Watson doesn't seem to be much part of the equation. And I'll say this real quick about the quarterback competition or the quarterback room. I don't even know if competition is an accurate word to use, but the quarterback position group and the expectation for Davis Mills, because this is the conversation here. It's like, well, you got to find out if this guy's a starter this year. You got to get him on the field, and you got to find out if he's a starter. You got to find out if he's a franchise quarterback. And I'm like, I mean, I guess, sure, but he's not. So he's not. So, and goodness, I could not imagine him proving that he is this year in his rookie year. Like, that would be just highly unlikely to me. So my thought is, let's temper that expectation, bring it down just a little bit. Okay, let's calm down, and let's see if he can be your backup quarterback this year. Like, my thing with Davis Mills is if he can't supplant Ryan Finley as the backup quarterback, if this guy's not your backup quarterback, like, I don't want any healthy scratches, and like if he's hurt, obviously that's different. But if he's healthy and is not the backup quarterback, then I don't even really want to talk about him much anymore. Like, I feel like we can just kind of move on to the next thing, and admit that shouldn't have been the pick. But that to me is a fair and realistic expectation. Can this guy at least come in and be your backup and go from there? And then you probably still go ahead and, like, don't not draft Spencer Rattler or whoever it is. Don't not draft that guy next year because you're holding out hope for Davis Mills.
Yeah. I think that it's interesting because you've got kind of like 3 guys. Was it Slovis from USC? Is it Sam Howell from North Carolina? And then you got Spencer Rattler. And the only one I've actually properly watched was Rattler, just in the game I was watching. Garrett Wallow, and the ball comes out of his hands so easily. It looks effortless, like deep balls. I suppose if you ever saw him on the that Netflix series, don't think he came across particularly well. And he's, I don't know if he's the kind of guy you want, and how does the fame, fortune, and all that kind of stuff that comes with it. We've seen that already kind of make somebody who you thought was salt of the earth type make some questionable decisions away from the field when his life changed dramatically from a financial and infamy point of view.
Yeah.
And he might actually be and he might end up being infamous rather than famous. And I think that's interesting on that. I hadn't actually seen that Mark Berman thing. He just tweeted out something 18 minutes ago, and it just says up to 4 people may speak to the NFL. A lot didn't want to do it. About 10 to 12 were contacted. And I think that's where it'll spell different. And I'm the same, Brandon. I hope that there's a point where you can say to Watson at this stage, and I know I've probably repeated this 100 times this offseason, but you've let us down, you've let the fans down, you've let your own name down as a thing. So if you're going to do anything this year, it's get back on the field with your tail between your legs and maybe try and play a bit and just prove to everybody that it's not affected you. And then we'll look at it again this offseason. But there could well be a post June 1st trade. I don't know. Just very quickly wrap up. Do you see it being settled before this offseason? Or do you think you'll still be technically a Texan sort of until the new calendar year at least?
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. It's not ideal, but I think that's what's going to end up happening. There's just too much that's uncertain and it hasn't been solved. And like, I still view things the same way that I did around the time of the draft. It's like, well, is he going to get traded before the draft? No, they got to deal with all of this stuff. All this stuff kind of has to get untangled. And it's the volume of cases, man. I mean, that's really what it is.
That's it.
You've got way it's way too many variables. Like trying to, I get going to the Ezekiel Elliott case and Ray Rice and Adrian anybody.
They were all just one.
Yeah, everybody else who's had one, maybe two, but like usually just like one thing going on, and it's like, yeah, but this guy's got like 22 now documented allegations, and not just documented, but like filed with a court, and there's process. Like, yeah, no, I don't see it. And I mean, we're over here trying to parse out the different scenarios and who would be good. Who would be the teams, and Philly. Philly seems like a legitimate candidate. There's buzz around the league about Philly being interested and them having a lot to offer. Along with what Miami and Philly seem to be those ideal landing spots with the most offer.
And maybe the Giants now potentially picking up that extra first next year, possibly.
Yes, and potentially the Giants as well. Even though obviously they'll take Deshaun Watson over Daniel Jones, but they've made a very odd commitment to Daniel Jones to me, as far as like that being their guy.
Do you know, I watched his tape, I was digressing a bit, but I think before we played Pittsburgh last year, just to watch their game the week before, and the kid can sling it. It's just his ball security. He's never improved it. So it's a funny one, that, and I think that's the thing that'll always loom over. And before we talk about the schedule, all this shit will always loom over this team, because you had the most important thing you could ever need or want in this game, and a mixture of him and a mixture of the team messed it up. And I suppose we got I don't know, were you at the charity golf day, River Oaks?
I was.
Pretty bougie. You weren't? Pretty bougie. That's
I was.
What did you make of it? It's
funny because I just ran into my boss. Not even like I ran into my boss's boss in the hallway not too long before I came in here to talk to you. And so we were talking about it because she's more of the one who runs in those circles on our behalf with the bougiest of bougie and the richest of the riches.
Right. That's River Oaks.
Yeah, that's what River Oaks is. That's the area where Cal McNair and Tony Busby live. The rich guys of Houston, the class of Houston, so to speak. And I was telling them I was telling my boss that I've lived here my entire life, pretty much my entire life, and there's a high school that's very, very popular in common named Lamar High School that's about 3 or 4 blocks away from the country club that I've been to dozens of times. Never been to that country club. Didn't know that that's exactly where it was. That it was that close. Like I've been in that close to that area, but I'm like, wow, the rich are actually within reach right here. So I mean, it's fascinating that that's such a rich and well known part of the town for a specific group of people. But for me, who's lived here my entire life, I'd never been there and hadn't considered it. So that part of it was interesting. Obviously when we got there on the content side of it, we knew going in that the people that were slated to speak to us were CEO Cal McNair, General Manager Nick Caserio, and the new team president, Greg Grissom. So we knew that, but and of course we do also have the context of Coach Cully having just lost his father not too long ago. But we also knew that Cully would be, or figured as much that Cully would be there, and so it was odd that he wasn't on the docket to talk to us, and that he did not talk to us. We didn't get the sense that he was trying to avoid us, because some of us were able to make some small talk with him on the side, on the golf course, so to speak, before, in a little allotted time that we were allowed to be there. But it was just an odd thing that they invited the football media to this event, knowing that we'd be there to ask football questions, and didn't make the football coach available.
Do you think because he messed up on that podcast with the two guys from NFL Network, I saw him give some answers to team media, which were not great. Do you think they maybe underestimated his ability to front it up for the next couple of years? Do you think they maybe? And obviously he's gone through a bereavement, and he's like your father and stuff, and that's a big thing. But I don't know if they've maybe just thought until this settles down with Watson, let's just keep him out at the firing line because he's almost too honest.
Yeah, the uncomfortable part about that too was the feeling that what you're saying is the case, and especially at the country club. It was hard to divorce that we are at the country club where, let's just be honest, we kind of stick out a little bit, some of us. And I argue myself and David Culley, it's not a lot of people, we stick out a little bit at the country club. And then on top of that, not really trusting how he's going to handle it or what he's going to say, if he's going to be too loose with it. So both of those things, it's like, hey, it's one thing for this to happen on Zoom, but man, we don't want this guy to say the wrong thing at the country club. For our event that's supposed to highlight charity, like Cal gave away $10,000 to charity for
pocket change,
right? But they they don't want to mess that up. They want that to be just let that sit there. So yeah, I think all of those things, them not wanting to make this an adversarial headline or for adversarial headlines to be written from it. And again, to specifically not cause some kind of weird, awkward scene at the country club.
What do you think of? And this is just again and overanalyzing everything. I think, and partly because I think you don't talk about the coach much because there's nothing really to talk about. We don't really know what it's going to be, a bit of a hybrid mishmash offense until we see it. Nobody really knows. There's not really any big signings or any players they've brought in to talk about. So you kind of get caught up in the small bits and maybe trying to understand a bit better why it's gone wrong. And the last two times Cal's been out, and then twice in a couple of weeks, rocking the handlebar moustache this week. I thought that was he's really sort of progressed that just from the classic sort of older man tash. He's kind of given himself some appeal. I don't know what it was. I don't know who he's modelled himself on. But I mean, he looks comical, I think, and he just kind of looks a bit kind of clumsy. But then I suppose you saw a clip with him going up to speak to Wade Smith. Wade Phillips, and he sort of butted in, and then he actually when you saw him like that, he actually kind of maybe he's relaxed, his own environment, it's his deal, etc. And he kind of looked all right. But what is the deal with his wife standing right in just out of camera shot every time, staring intently as he answers the question? I mean, I'd be off put by that, and I don't know. And he doesn't seem like the most comfortable speaker in a public setting, but it's almost like she's watching, and I become uncomfortable with her influence as you see her more and more, because I just don't. I don't see how it can be a good thing, particularly with the Watson kind of issue. You can. Everybody kind of views these issues from their own personal light. And I don't know, there's something about her that makes me uneasy. And she always has done. And obviously there was the famous picture of her falling asleep out of one too many in Chicago. But yeah, there's something about it that it looks strange. So therefore I would suggest it perhaps is.
Yeah. So I was, I was there, and I feel like I've been around them a couple of times before, but this is probably as close as I've actually been to, and as close and as long of a time that I've been around them. And that she's just the dominant, she's the A personality of the group.
Oh yeah. I mean, big time.
So that is just, that's always, if she's around, that's what it's going to be. And like, I think that everything that we've seen from Cal supports that, as far as like just how the way he carries a room versus the way that she can. I mean, she really was, she and David Culley were really the personalities out there. Nick Casario is actually a little quieter, but obviously has his own kind of confidence and way about himself. And Cal's there, the nice guy, but just, kind of just there, the money guy, not a whole lot there. Like you heard him call the linebacker a tackling machine.
No, because he's forgotten his name, isn't he?
Well, and not just that, but like a linebacker who's a tackling machine as opposed to what? You know what I mean? Like he's a linebacker, so like, yes, he's a tackling machine because he plays a linebacker. It'd be like he's saying, yeah, we drafted that quarterback who, from what I heard, is a throwing machine. or that running back who's a running machine, or the lineman who's a blocking machine.
You can almost like he's probably just like quoted that word for word of somebody. He's probably asked, "What's with the new linebacker?" Oh, Kelly's a tackling machine. It's a simple metaphor you can take away and just go, "Oh, great," and then he'll hold on to that. Forgot the guy's name, and he said it. Was it Neville Hewitt? Is it or something like that?
Neville Hewitt who he was referencing, because he did say from the Jets. And that's
He almost pictured the detail, but he's just not that close because he's the guy that plays video games at his office on the floor, so he's not too bothered.
But that's the personality dynamic, man. She is she's the A type. He's more of the B type. And it's not like it's unbearable. She's fine. It's pleasant. That picture though is the picture that you referenced though is going to be like a forever meme. Let them be as bad this season as we suspect or expect them to be
every week.
Oh my God, that's gonna be like living on your timeline.
Should probably talk about the schedule. I think the only one thing was the Clinton Dix, obviously a draft pick in 2014, 2015, Green Bay Packers, Bears for a year. Didn't make the Cowboys roster, gets supplanted by, I think it's Darius Thompson or something like that. So on the depth chart, out of the game for a year, it's probably just a kick the tires kind of. Maybe add another one. We've still got a couple open. I think we've got 2 spots left open on the 90 man.
Yeah, a couple of spots left open, and I mean, you don't really have. I think they still have AJ Moore, but I don't think they have a ton of safety depth. Beyond that. So, and then of course Lonnie's going to start, and he's only in his second year playing the position.
At number 1, he's changed his number to a C as well. Yeah, I mean,
how about that?
Just a touch of self-awareness, Lonnie wouldn't go amiss.
Hey, I'm telling you, one thing that this guy, I always love the questions that we get whenever we talk to a defensive coach, namely it'd either be Anthony Weaver, Romeo, and someone would ask about Lonnie's confidence. And I'm like, because they moved his positions or whatever. And I'm like, man, you don't know this guy at all. You don't follow this guy, and you must not have been around before the pandemic, when we used to be in the locker rooms and talk to these guys. This guy is not lacking for confidence at all. and he's showing you that he's going to wear number 1. And damn it, I hope he plays like a like a safety, and like with a level of awareness that wasn't clear and wasn't there when he first moved the position. I think it's possible. I haven't ruled out Lonnie Johnson yet. Aside from just being disappointed at the fact that they drafted, used a premium pick on a guy that they thought was a cornerback and had to move him to safety.
There's a huge amount of kind of question marks with him. I always remember the game I was at in Kansas City where he just basically had a street brawl with Travis Kelce, and he should have had about 5 or 6 penalties flagged. He got away with 5 or 6 of them at least.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, do you know what? The guy's at least got the willingness. So I think there's definitely the tools are there, but he's certainly not put it together. And I think somebody who was playing at safety didn't look like he knew how to play safety, despite it not being all too different from corner. I know it's a completely different skill set, but as a corner, I would suggest you have awareness of what safety should be doing in and around you, and to kind of look that lost at times. And he gave up. From some of the tape clips I put out on a Tuesday morning from the All-22, there was a number. So going to number 1 is perhaps a little bit short of the self-awareness of his developmental capacity that he needs. But yeah, look, you need confidence in defensive back. They're looking at Steven Nelson as well. That was rumoured yesterday. They desperately need another corner. I don't know how they're going to fill out the season with the depth chart they've got. But time will tell on that. I think it's a strange one, how they've not added any more corners, I think, because like that, you think they learn a lesson. I know it's a different coaching staff, but I keep going back to the thought all the time when you see certain things come out that it just kind of feels kind of similar to last year in many ways. Like I feel like a lot's changed, but also at the same time, not a lot's changed. There's a lot of reoccurring themes, I think, as we head into this season.
Yeah, we were trying to decide, I think even just a couple of weeks ago, whether, we know that Nick Caserio's made a lot of moves. The question is, are these good moves? It's been real easy, it seems like, to get caught up in, 60, 70, however many transactions. And over half the roster turnover, and then just assume that just because they've made changes that those changes are good. But it seems to be a lot of running in place. Like kind of like what you what you're indicating. It feels like they're on a treadmill. And they're not actually going anywhere. They're just exercising. And exercise can be good, and and maybe it's gonna work. I know there is a hope and a belief in. I know is because you mentioned corner, that Desmond King, and I haven't watched a lot of tape on Desmond King, like and really studied his game, but there's a belief here that maybe that could, like, this could be the prove it year, akin to a couple of years ago when Tyrann Mathieu was here at safety and earned himself a bigger contract with the Chiefs, and that maybe Desmond King could have a year like that. I mean, maybe, and they have added some guys. I mean, Terrence Mitchell, like there are more guys there, and I feel like the one positive thing about the defensive back room is that there shouldn't be as much Vernon Hargraves again if they stay healthy. But it's not like you've really improved much there. And so I like, and that was the reason why in the draft, that was the position. I did a podcast on the B-Block podcast leading up to the draft saying, go get you somebody that can cover, because you don't have that many guys that can do that right now. And so, and especially, going and looking into the future. Now, what I didn't give enough credit to was that they don't have any guys anywhere for the future. Like, they don't have anything. So for me to single out corner was very specific and so somewhat nitpicky when you think about the future, because they need a guy everywhere, pretty much. Pretty much everywhere. So, but I thought that, and that was the major concern for me, and I still feel that way. That they don't have, like, Bradley Roby is their best cover guy, and I don't think that that's ever going to be good enough. Bradley Roby should be a number 2 corner, and the fact that he's by far and away your best says a lot about the room.
Yeah, it's exactly like Shaq Wilson's your best rusher. He should be your second, if not your third best rusher if you're a good defense.
Exactly. Same.
I think that's just
yep.
Yeah, so it's like it's just average upon average of competition, and they keep going about competition, but yeah, there's not enough time, there's not enough reps to kind of even work out who the best guys are here. I think, and that's the problem. It's just been such high volume that I think you would have been better, and for my opinion, having a huge undrafted rookie class and saying to guys, look, we're rebuilding here. This is probably the lowest risk environment you can come into in this year. And, we're sticking with the coaching staff for 2 years here. That's the commitment we've got. So you're going to have 2 full years. You're going to have a full year to develop, learn what to be a pro, and then second year, you're going to have a chance to actually, test yourself if you've got a future in the league. And look, I think maybe one, if not both, the 2 offensive linemen from Texas A&M might be viable options. But I just don't think we did enough of that, and bring another 2 wide receivers in. But, bring those 2 wide receivers and give them a chance, because then you've got Alex Erickson, Moncrief, Chris Conley, all these guys. Just give it to the undrafted guys and see what they've got. I think it just feels like we've been, we've hoarded all these guys, and I just don't know what the team's going to be. So as we go through this schedule, I've got no clue. I mean, I suppose we can make the assumption that we think Tyrod Taylor will be the starter, and we'll just muddle our way through with a variance of personnel, and it'll probably change, and we'll probably release players throughout the season, and there will be more turnover. I can't see the amount of turnover we've had not continuing through. It's always been a churn the bottom of your roster kind of sentiment, and I think that is important because it shows accountability, and you can cut people if they're not pulling their weight, not performing, etc. New England's punt returner muffs it, he's gone on Monday morning. So there's that kind of element of it, but I think it's hard to see anything but a clouded picture with this roster and how that pertains to these 17 games that have just been laid out for us yesterday.
Yeah, and we were talking about it here that for the most part, like, they don't, like, how many games, when we found out earlier in the day that the Jags would be the opener at home, mind you, we thought, okay, maybe that the only game that they'll be favored in, and you can make a case for maybe some others, and it'll play out. Obviously, as the season plays out, it's hard to say that this far ahead of time, but we were thinking that, like, man, this could be the only game that they're favored in. And then the line comes out, the betting line comes out from Las Vegas, and they're not even favored at home against the lowly Jacksonville Jaguars. And why is that? Because even the Jaguars, with Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence, offer more credibility than the outfit that you've put together here in Houston, with David Culley as your head coach, and either Tyrod Taylor or Davis Mills or God
Ryan Finley.
or God I was going to say, or God forbid, Ryan Finley, in some kind of odd circumstance, is your quarterback. And Lovie Smith's out there with 17 linebackers, and you're just trying to figure it out. And that's that's reflective of how bad things are. And you talk about the roster. Yeah, this is a roster of all, pretty much all replaceable guys, man. I mean, one of the big storylines that we'd made, as this roster was being developed, was who are the cornerstone players.
You saw that, didn't you? Like I've just not been able to bring myself to write an article since the draft or anything like that. But you see the images or the headline images, and it's often Brandon Cooks. There's a couple of Justin Reeds, a couple of Laramie Tunsil's.
Right. Yeah.
But there's not many.
Yeah, and to think, like those. No disrespect to any of those guys, much respect to them, but those are not, with the exception of maybe Tunsil. None of those are actually cornerstone players. Those are good players to have on your team. They're all good players, but that's not what that is.
Did you see the just talking about Robin Salt and the wins? Did you see? I think it was Peter King or something like that said that actually, privately, was it Chris Greer, the Dolphins GM? Actually, they were overwhelmed by the trade with Houston privately because they had serious questions about paying a left tackle top rate salary on a rebuild. I mean, a left tackle does not win you games.
Does not win you games. And oh man, I was having this debate with another guy in the media who I'm really cool with, and we were just talking about like the Tunsil deal and reflecting on it. And I was admitting that, like in retrospect, because I was a proponent of the deal and didn't give enough scrutiny to what was given up, because I was like,
same here.
Yeah, man, they need a left tackle, man. Deshaun's going to get killed out there, and didn't give that enough scrutiny. And so now I'm able to say, hey, I was wrong, flat out, hard stop, no excuses. I was wrong. And my buddy's like, nah, man, we weren't wrong. This is they had to do that, and it's like, hey man, no. It's like if I'm moving to a one bedroom, a smaller 1 bedroom apartment, I don't need a 55-inch like it was basically buying a TV way bigger than what your living room space is. When you need a TV because you don't have one, but you don't need that one. Like that's not the one that's gonna get you there. And you ended up, paying for as if you had room for a projector in your living room. And it's like, no, you could have gotten by with the tackle that you just drafted a few months before. And it's just mind blowing that they spent that much money on a left tackle when you almost never have to. And the only reason, or the only team that it would have made sense for to give that money to, actually was the Dolphins, which makes sense why they were having concerns, because they drafted the guy and they got the guy, and so it would have made sense for them to pay the guy. But here comes the Texans saving the day and bailing them out of this conundrum that the Texans didn't realize existed.
Yeah, and when you see the Orlando Brown price that's gone this offseason, it just shows you timing is everything.
Yep.
Leverage is everything. And we'll hopefully Casseri will understand that if Watson is shipped post 1st June. But yeah, I think we're both on the same page that he'll just be clouding the 17-game stretch. Just in terms of 17 games, what do you think of that? I thought a far better use of the 17th game would be just your local rivals every year, whether that's the Saints in terms of distance, drive time, or whether it's Dallas, in terms of interstate rivalry every year, and just have that constant game every year. And it'll be next year, I think, that we go back up to Dallas.
Yeah.
Which I remember that. And if you think of how much the team's changed since that game, when there was probably 60% of the fan base in AT&T was wearing red.
Yeah.
To now, if you go back 4 years later, there'll maybe be 30%, of the seats will be taken up by people supporting the H. And I think it's changed so much. But I thought the 17th game just kept having another rotation with the opposing conference. I just kind of thought it was a bit lazy, really.
Yeah, I mean, it is literally the same as the last couple of years. Like, let's just end the season against the Titans, or end the season against Nate, and not just that, but like when I look at the schedule and break it down, I'm able to make every single game interesting in some kind of way, except the Titans game. I don't have any, like, obviously I'm going to watch them and I'm sure I'll get into them once they play, but they are probably the biggest dud. And again, Texans fans, people who follow the team, don't really need a reason to get up for the Titans. So that's fine, but it still is the case that there's no, at least I don't have it. I don't have the buzz on what the Titans game is. And so then you get down to the end of the season and, that's the 17th game. I'd much rather, I know that the thing that I wanted was to get at some point, if they could stack the teams on the western part of the country together, the Rams, Chargers, and Seahawks, and if I could get them all in some kind of clutter, and they spread them out quite a bit through the schedule. That was one thing I was kind of hoping for. But yeah, that last game is so unimaginative. I couldn't agree with you more. It's just they just squeezed an extra game somewhere in between, and it's like, oh, we're playing the Cardinals. All right, well, good thing there's a story there, because that wouldn't make sense otherwise, or doesn't feel, or it doesn't feel like it makes sense otherwise.
I don't see why. If I think it was Vic Fangio actually pushed this idea last year, but I thought it'd be a far more interesting product if you play 16 or you play the other 15 AFC teams, and then you play 2 rotating NFC games every year. Then you get the truly best of the NFC versus the AFC when it comes to playoff time, and then actually the NFC and the AFC play one another in every game right through to the playoff.
Yeah,
and then you get it levels the playing field a bit more. It reduces the margins, and you get the best team at the end of the year. Because I think sometimes you can get, if you look at the other year when the Chiefs weren't even meant to be in an automatic spot, and then New England got beat off Miami last game of the season, and it just kind of swung the whole playoffs completely wide open, and they go in and win the thing. So I think you could probably level the playing field out a bit and get more or a wider variance of games rather than having to wait 4 years to play some of these teams. And I think as well, playing the teams in your division twice, it's pretty boring because like when we're looking at the schedule, like speaking with guys last night, we're like, right, what game are we going to go to? Hopefully, borders being open. We've always wanted to do 2 road games, and it's Indianapolis. And you're like, well, I've done that, obviously, So it's like it's repetition.
Yeah, and then especially like when you're in a division that sucks, it's like, okay, well, why do the Titans need to play the Texans twice last year? Like why is that necessary? It doesn't feel necessary. And on top of that, I think, and this is an even probably more to the point, is that the divisions are supposed to be geographically specific, but are not necessarily always. And so it's not like you're doing that really either, In some cases you are, in some cases you're not, like the AFC North, for example, though those cities, like there are actual rivalries there. Some of the, you could look on the West, but like the AFC South, there's no connection between Houston, Nashville, Jacksonville, and and Indianapolis. Like we're 4 totally, like the only connection you got there is just that Nashville took Houston's team, or Houston team left for Nashville. But otherwise, like so like the reasoning for it that would make sense for the way that it is doesn't actually doesn't check out. So why not do some of these other things to tinker with it?
Well, because I was looking at the map today, and my geography of the US is not always the best. But when you look at all the teams at the other side of Lake Michigan, obviously you've got Pittsburgh, you've got Cleveland, Buffalo, and Detroit, and that's a perfect division because they're all right next to each other. But obviously that's not how they've laid not how they've laid it out. Just looking at the schedule as a whole, bye week 10, so it's kind of pushed back a week, so the equivalent of week 9 from last year. So, all right. I think what's interesting is the split, though, either side of the bye week, because you've got, of the first 9 games, you've got 4 home, 5 road, and then on the back 8 games, you've got 5 home, 3 road. So technically the second half post-bye is perhaps kinder in that sense. Not that I think by that stage of the season it'll particularly matter. Only one primetime game, I suppose. They've only got themselves to blame for that as well. And then they also have 3 home games back to back as well for the second time in recent memory.
Yeah. So for me, what stands out about what we've got with home versus away, I'm noticing, and I knew this, like I didn't need the schedule to come out to know this, but once you see it put together, I don't have them winning a road game. I mean, they could beat Jacksonville, obviously, and they probably will win a road game. They could win more than one road game, but like I'm looking at it here, I'm like, man, I feel like I like their chances better with the Jets at home. I feel like I like their chances on Thursday Night Football with the Panthers at home. I feel like, they could beat the Patriots for a third straight year, even though I don't necessarily feel as confident about that as I did last year. But I see opportunities for them at home, and when they go on the road, no matter the sequence, and it is road heavy to start, but I've basically got all of those being losses, and so that to me is sobering to think about where the team will be at the bye week. To your point about it being road heavy before, that to me means that you're going to already have sort of a losing team, and that's going to be realized for you before you even get to that back half of the schedule. And then as far as the one having one national game, like for it to be, I don't understand. Or I should say, it's clear that the league is not impressed by or like clamoring for any of what we are gleaning from Texan storylines. What are the top Texan storylines that they're going to be? When are they going to let's put the Cardinals on? You make that a primetime game. Let's look at some of these matchups. It could be Carson. It could have even been the season opener, or one of these Carson Wentz games, or any of these rookie quarterbacks that's coming in, or Justin Herbert, and like trying to think of ways to build it up. And they're just like, nah, Panthers. You get the Panthers in week 3 on,
it was literally the extra game. That was
it's like here's just your throw in, and and that's it. Now, for me, like I would have loved to have seen that national game be the Cardinals one, because that would have been like, just that is the time where I think everyone would have been able to just kind of dump on this whole thing that the Texans have done over the last couple of years and where we are, and maybe even put a pin in it and move on, because it's like, here you are, you see, these guys are on this team, and you see what's left of this team, you don't recognize it anymore, and I thought that could have been a compelling matchup, but.
Yeah, you can almost imagine the graphics now, and they'll probably still do this on the Thursday Night Football. That'll be NFL Network, and I think Amazon as well, so probably won't get the full treatment, but you can just imagine all the graphics of all the players new signed up, stacked up. This was the team last year, this is the team this year. Don't even know half these players. Also Rand, nobody's journeyman versus a team. If it was going to be Arizona, who'll probably hand it to us, I would think, considering some of the vendettas and some of the feeling of being let down, particularly from '99. So yeah, I mean, looking at you, like you said, I think it's interesting because we've got a state of flux with our quarterback, but actually seven out of the seven opponents, and maybe even an 8 if Watson ends up going to Miami, are going to have new quarterbacks at some point this season. So it's, there's a lot that is TBC. There's a lot can change, but I think what we can't hide and what will be unmissable is the lack of talent on both sides of the ball. And I think when you look at the defenses, I think when you go, and I think it was obviously great. We've got Buffalo and we've got Cleveland early. And Buffalo's the game I really want to get to and see what that, the much famed Mafia, and it's meant to be like a college atmosphere. And I think that's probably the best road game this year, besides Miami. If you want to go to the beach, you'll need to pack your cold weather gear even still in October. But you think if you got Cleveland, you got Jadeveon Clowney, it's going to be a big defense. Buffalo, I don't think will be able to handle their offense. Same Indy, I don't think will handle their defense in week 6, and then Arizona, like you said, and then you got the Rams and then Miami into the bye. So I think, if you go through those games, I think there's a very legitimate outcome that it's maybe one win. And probably I would say right now, if somebody offered you 2 wins, you'd probably take that.
Yeah. So let's start with the Browns game. This is going to be the ultimate test of what did they do with that run defense, right? Like you're not gonna, like you're gonna really get to fully focus on, hey, historically bad run defense. A year later, with all the changes, how does it look now against the Browns? And then the same thing with the Bills. Like, they're not necessarily that type of defense, but it's a very good defense. And don't forget this story, man. The David Culley versus, here's going to be a David Culley and Tim Kelly / Pep Hamilton led offense against Leslie Frazier's defense, the guy that you didn't hire.
Good hired.
And that's going to be, fully focused to me, aside from the fact that what a difference not even a full 2 years makes. When we were laughing, I know I was laughing at the Bills for blowing that 16-0 lead in the AFC divisional round. I was there for that. And, that we are in totally different scenarios and situations now and places now as franchises, just to look at, hey, this thing has actually worked out for the Bills. I know that was a rough night and we were on the Texans were on the positive end of it, but this has worked out for the Bills. And look at where they are now here at this part of the schedule, in week 4, not even a full 2 seasons later. So, that fascinates me. And then the Colts, a couple of weeks after that, when they're back on the road, another similar situation here with the Culley, Hamilton, Kelly led offense versus Matt Eberflus, another guy who you thought might be in the mix for the head coach position for the Texans, and who, Deshaun Watson, when asked, because of course they played him twice, when asked about Eberflus, was complimentary. And then again, there's that Cardinals game waiting right after that. Some real fascinating road matchups where you don't feel like they're gonna win those games, but they're gonna be interesting and compelling, and there's gonna be like anticipation leading up to it, and then you're just gonna watch your football team. I mean, even that Miami game, right? Like, I know here there's here at our station, there's like this kind of silent, not even silent hope. They've talked about this on air. If Deshaun Watson gets traded to Miami and he's either served out his suspension or the suspension doesn't happen or something like that. Like, if all of those things can happen between now and then, and by the time you get to week 9,
that's game 9. So
by the time you get to week 9 and you go to Miami, are you, like, aside from the fact that Miami's fleeced your organization, and like even without the Deshaun Watson thing, you still got, hey, Will Fuller, Bernard McKinney, and all these guys on one side used to be on your team, and then you just got and then of course then they got all your picks, and then you just got Laramie Tunsil on your Laramie Tunsil,
trying to pretending that he's interested in run blocking, just sort of kind of floats through
exactly, as opposed to just making business decisions and cashing those checks that Jack Easterby and Bill O'Brien We're so eager.
And it's all guaranteed. He's had it already up front. So if you're ever going to see a dip in play for a guy who's not relying on the game checks and got a huge portion of his salary guaranteed this year, and I think he's only on the hook for 700.
Yeah, he is a mindful guy. Like he's not gonna mix it up if he doesn't deem it necessary. Okay, let's just and I think and you can see that on film, where he's not dogging it necessarily, but he's not, he's not gonna go all out when it's if the moment doesn't necessarily call for it, if he doesn't see the point. And so then you get that, and so that you've got that matchup. It's like, thanks, Miami. This is our franchise player that we actually traded to protect the guy that we thought was the franchise player, and I'll be damned if they don't end up having him. Like if that happens, like they would have to change that. Like if Deshaun Watson somehow pipe dream ended up being traded to Miami and was able to play in that Week 9 game, and you've got the Dolphins for all of the fleecing that they've done to the Texans, and to add insult to injury, they've got Watson at that point. Like that to me, I mean, maybe it's just the Texans' bias and influence on my part, but that to me, I don't see a more interesting game, other than maybe Brady going back to New England. Like that's it for me.
Yeah, I think if you look at the week prior as well with the Rams defense, what's the concoction offense going to put up against that defense? I know they've changed coordinators, so
yeah,
they may be a different proposition. And then, as you said, at Tennessee, it's probably the most unintriguing game. But then I suppose you get to see Zach Wilson, you get to see Justin Herbert, and you might see Trey Lance down the stretch as well. But I think when you look at those back end games, it's kind of hard probably to get excited now. But I think like exactly that Tunsil point and whoever else, what players have mailed it in at that point, because they've either it's like something like Whitney Merciless, and I saw him talking about the he thinks he can play in 4-3, and that's what he played at college, and we'll see if he's had a physical transformation. But again, another guy who knows he's not going to be here next year, who's had all his salary paid up in bonus payments, so he didn't hit the salary cap. Same with Brandon Cooks. Every player that could have been renegotiated has been renegotiated, have pretty much a fair chunk of their salary already. They're not reliant on game checks. They're not going to really be affected by that. So, yeah, I think that's a big turning point. And I wonder, do you think, do they bring in a different quarterback after the bye? Do they use that as an opportunity? Say you do go 2-7 into the bye, which is quite likely, and I think would be a good outcome probably. Anything more than that, I'd be pleasantly surprised. That is a potential where they throw in Mills, I think, for those last games, particularly when you've got at Tennessee, which is not the hardest environment to play in, and then you've got the 3 home games, albeit against the Colts, but the Seattle and Jets defense, I think, is probably a good tester for somebody to see, like, lower end defenses, can you compete at this level?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's serving 2 purposes, and one of them, gives off a more positive vibe than the other. It's what you describe. It's evaluating and finding out what you have in a guy. Like, how good is he? And we've been talking about that here for days now. Like, when exactly do you throw Davis Mills in? And now that we've got the schedule and we've played it out the way we have in our head, yeah, that seems like, bring him back after the bye week. Most of those games are going to be at home again, like the home heavy side of the schedule. So that could make sense for him. And also, like, at that point, if you are, 2-7, if you've won 1 or 2 games at that point, it probably helps you to have the lesser of the quarterback out there, and that's the not so positive vibe of it, because it has the feeling of tanking. And depending on what your sensibilities are about that, you might not love that element of it. Like, we're putting Davis Mills out there both because we want to evaluate him, but also because, we don't necessarily want to win these games. And, if we think that Tyrod Taylor still actually gives us a better chance to win, and we don't want to win, then maybe we should put. So it's almost like a balance there, because you want him to do well, and you want the evaluation to ultimately be a positive one. So you don't want it to be the case that he's not good, But those are somewhat competing interest, and I'll be interested to see where my mindset is, honestly, once we get to that point. As someone who doesn't believe him to be that guy, if I'm just like, yeah, let's go out there and do this experiment, but if I'm kind of like, in the back of my mind rooting for it to fail, so they can go out there and get somebody that you actually think, and use a first round pick, and a top 2, top 3 pick if they're that bad on a guy, as opposed to the seventh, I don't know, what was he, the 7th or 8th quarterback, taken in a draft, that to me there's a benefit there, that's double-sided. That's kind of two-sided. The evaluation and the, hey guys, let's kind of accept our fate here without saying explicitly we're mailing it in.
Yeah. And I think as well that's what frustrates me. I think when you look at the way it's shaped up and I don't think this is a particularly tough schedule for an average to above average NFL team that could potentially get 8 or 9 wins and maybe sneak a playoff berth. But there is no conditions, or there's no players that they've brought in to grow in these conditions and actually find out if you've got something else for the future, perhaps apart from Davis Mills, Nico Collins, and Brevin Jordan. The rest are all going to probably not, 60% of them probably aren't going to be here in 2 years' time. The good ones you'll keep. They might tail off. They find their level, and so I struggle to see, and I know, and I've said this a few times, and a lot of Texans fans, and I hope this podcast helps, and I hope listen to Radio 610 or all the other guys that are putting stuff out there. I hope there's going to be a bit of solidarity and strength in numbers to get through this, because it's not going to be easy at times to watch this. And I think when you think the biggest benefit of is you might find out if Davis Mills is a backup bridge guy to get you through until you find your guy, whether that's in April 2022 in Las Vegas or whether that's April 2023 in Kansas City at the draft there. It's a waiting game, and it's almost like if you gave the fan base, and this will be a final question, Brandon, for today, if you gave the fan base and you gave everyone a chance to just hit fast forward and get us through to the draft next year and regroup, coach and staff, TBC, that'll work itself out. But how many people out of 100 would take that option?
Yeah, I think plenty would. The reaction that I was getting throughout the day, producing content on this, sort of the build up, that's part of the job here. The radio station is, building these moments up, regardless of how you even feel about it. Yeah, you're building it up for the audience. And it was disappointing to see some of the feedback be, hey man, we don't care. Like we don't, and not just from trolls or from casuals, as some might call them, but from people that we know and understand to be passionate fans about this team, like people that we've interacted with for years on social media, through our text line and through phone calls and post game shows and all those things, like fans that we've come to know and understand to be legitimate fans of the team are like, hey man, we understand that y'all are doing y'all's job, but we just don't care about this schedule. We're not, or at the very least, we're not excited about it. It's not the same as it is on normal years. And so I think I can't put a number on it, but there's definitely a feeling there. That there's definitely something to that. I know that I can tell you that the reason why I was excited about the schedule release, because I understand the fate of this team, or the state of this team where it is because I wanted to find out when I was going to get to see these opposing players. So, we talked about, Justin Herbert, or you mentioned Justin Herbert earlier. I was hoping that I'd get to see that guy early in the season, because, I don't want a chance for him to get hurt, or in week 16 for them to not to be playing for anything. For whatever reason, to have to wait that long, that late in the season, week 16, to see him. I was hoping I'd get to see him early, because that's somebody I've been a fan of for, from the very beginning. All the possibilities of the rookie quarterbacks that could be in, from Trevor Lawrence to Zach Wilson, Trey Lance is a possibility. Could even get Mac Jones, and then so you're looking forward to this is the second straight year, and way more so this year than even last year, because obviously like Deshaun Watson was on the team, JJ Watt was on the team. There felt like there were reasons to watch. Way more so this year, probably than any other year. I was looking at the schedule way more so with the other teams in mind than the one that I cover and the one that I care about. And I think that is reflected in the fan base and in media. No one is really excited as much as we are. Or I'll just speak for myself. I'm not as excited about the Texans as I am just like last year. I was excited to watch. Now I'm just curious.
Yeah,
it's more curiosity than anything.
Yeah, they're assuming it'll be 100% capacity, and I think there probably is a good likelihood it will be, or near enough that. How many people actually buy the tickets? How many people, because you saw Greg Grissom speak this week, and he's got a hell of a job because you think ticket sales are going to be down. And look, I'll make my way there, but I made a very firm commitment this offseason that I would go there, but I will not give Cal the money for a ticket. If somebody gives me a ticket, I'll walk in, but I'm not buying a ticket, and he'll never get a penny out of me for the rest of the time I watch this team, because I've overinvested for, not that I expected something in return. It wasn't an investment, but I donated far too much than I ever should have. So, I'll happily buy a road ticket to Buffalo. I'll happily, go and buy their beers inside the ground, but I'll make it there, and hopefully we'll see some guys like yourself, Brandon, when we get there, and hopefully our borders open, etc. And that's the thing I look forward to this year. But I will not be given the handlebar any cash this year. That's for sure. I'll not be making my way in. So, but yeah, I think it will be interesting to see if the sentiment is reflected in the stands, because it was to a degree last year. And it doesn't paint a rosy picture, but I think it's the investing in the slog to get there to hopefully turn to another day. But I think if you gave me the fast forward button, I'd probably hit it before you finished your question. But look, I think we'll be here, and I hope everybody kind of sticks together through this off season to find a way and to find a way to new days that will lie ahead, because this is all cyclical. Don't forget it.
Yeah, and I think, though, just to put a cap on that, I think what really burns about it, and you understand this, what really burns about it is just how unnecessary it all feels. How it just feels like it didn't. Like it's one thing. Like we have teams here that that didn't work out. At various times. Like it's one thing for it to just not work. To be the Bills of the 90s, the Buffalo Bills of the 90s, or or Andy Reid's Philadelphia Eagles, or for it to just not work out, or even the Texans, of 10 years ago,
and 2011, 2012,
and it just didn't work out. But this doesn't even feel like that. This feels like it was sabotaged, or the rug was pulled out for, like, I don't know exactly. You can use whatever euphemism or whatever, however you want to describe it, but it doesn't feel right. Like it feels like you were wronged as a fan and as someone who invests your time and energy into the Texans. Like none of it had to be. And I think that's what's the offensive part about it, and what makes it a little harder to be optimistic when you even when you want to be. You're like, man, they just kind of smacked me in my face, man. Like we had a team and then we didn't. And for no real, like, it's hard to find like a real good reason for it. So I think that the fan base is struggling with that still. And there are some people that they're going to have to get good again to get back, because it's not like they can, or feel like they can trust the process. Like the trust has been broken in that sense.
Yeah. And I think we've got to hit rock bottom to start kind of probably healing, I think, and coming together again as a fan base, because it's been an extreme. And I think there's a difference between living and dying with every headline and every win and loss, or every move you don't agree with. But when it's been a systematic failure that's led to 101 litany of tactical errors, personnel, you name it, puts us in a spot where we're talking about a team that only last year I thought could have won 8 or 9 games comfortably, and now we're talking 3 to 4 wins on this schedule and how it pans out. But Brandon, thank you very much for your time, mate. Always appreciate having you on, and trying to make sense of it all. But as I said, thank you very much, mate. Appreciate it.
I'm glad to do it, and hopefully soon enough we'll be talking about a winner eventually. It won't be anytime soon, but hopefully soon enough. Hopefully we don't have to wait too long.
Well, thanks very much for Brandon for his time this week. The schedule is out. Hope's probably at a low. We'll be probably taking a week off, being 2 days later this week, but hopefully we'll be back talking some fan group therapy sessions. We won't call it that, but we'll be looking for people to come on, join us, and talk through to make some of it over the off season as we get into the OTAs phase 2 and 3 before training camp starts up. So we'll be asking to hear from you as we get into that midpoint of the off season. But check us out at podcasttexans.com on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. But we'll catch you back in a couple of weeks.